Hello. Hello. Happy Thursday. It doesn't really matter what day of the week it is at this point for us because we're all here at home. We're been doing a lot of gardening, been doing a lot of whatever we can find to do to kind of busy ourselves. And I've been trying to take care of my mom and dad, make sure that they don't go to the grocery store, all the things, all the new normals that we kind of have now, which is kind of it's really surprising. Um, but I got some new baby ducks. I've got 5 baby ducks and 5 chicks, so that keeps us real busy. Um, I really want to know what y'all been up to because I miss y'all. I really, really do. I really miss you, and I miss our time together. So this is what we're gonna be doing here. Um, I want to let you know that God always has a plan for everything. Everything that happens, anything on this world, anything that you go through, anything that has to do like with the bigger picture of the world itself, there's always a plan. God always has a plan for his people. When Jeremiah had to go and tell everybody if they didn't turn from their sins and all what would befall upon Jerusalem, he had to do that. Um, and uh, and when he would try not to, it would drive him kind of insane until he got out there and got the message out there that God told him to do. But when Jerusalem fell, um, we've been talking about Daniel, and when Jerusalem fell, Daniel was led out of his own home, what he had known his entire life. He was led into something that he didn't even know what was coming. So you can imagine the things and the thoughts that were going through his mind. But you got to remember what Daniel had. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. Daniel's faith was like impeccable. He loved God and he trusted God, and God knew that in him and saw that in him. But God had a plan when he led the people out of Jerusalem because he had that plan in Daniel. Daniel and 3 of his friends, um, which they were put into the palace. And they were there to, I don't know, the king said, go out and get a couple of boys that would look good around the palace, that are from Jerusalem. And when he did that, God put into plan, or put into effect his plan to be able to look after his people through the people that he put into power. Because Daniel, we all think of him through the lion's den. That's about the only story that we ever really truly hear. But Daniel was a leader. Daniel led those people. Daniel was put second into power after he interpreted King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So God continued on looking over and ruling over his people, even though they were led into a country that was completely and totally not home. Everything in Daniel's life completely changed. He didn't live in the same place. He lived in a different country. He was put into some of the strangest, probably, he probably was just wanting to say, is this a nightmare? Am I going to wake up? What's going to happen? But he continued to have that faith in God, to where he relied completely upon that. And that's what we have to do. When things in our lives change, we have to really, instead of driving ourselves crazy with worry and what's going to happen, what's next, all those things that we do naturally, because we do that. That's what we do when we don't have God. We drive ourselves kind of into a I don't know what, because we're constantly worried about what the future holds and about one of the things. So you look at what Daniel was going through. Daniel had no idea what was coming. He didn't even know he didn't even know what was going to happen. If he was going to be, if they were going to, if they could do anything to him. So he had to really completely and totally rely on his faith. And then after and we talked about the dream, I don't know if you remember, that Nebuchadnezzar had. And Nebuchadnezzar wanted someone to tell him what he dreamed. And he wouldn't tell him what it was and what it's about. He just wanted someone to tell him, and Daniel was able to do that through his faith. Daniel and his 3 friends, we know who those 3 friends are. Him and his 3 friends went and prayed, and God told him what Nebuchadnezzar dreamed, which is, God always hears you and he knows you. And when you go to pray to him, he hears you and knows you, and he is for sure He is for sure there. But most of the time, most of the stories we know about Daniel is about the lion's den, and that is just one small fraction of what Daniel did. He was, not only did he interpret dreams, but he also had dreams, which are written in the book of Daniel. If you want to go find that, you need to find that, and you need to read that, because it's very interesting. But what I'm going to do today, I'm going to read you about the writing on the wall. There's always a saying that we have, it's like the writing was already on the wall. It was already done for. I don't know if you've ever heard your parents say that. I know I have, or I've even used it. This is where it comes from. And this is the 5th chapter of Daniel. And I'm just going to read to you this because it's pretty interesting. And it was when King Belshazzar had become king. And I don't even think Daniel was anything like he was with King Nebuchadnezzar with this king. But Belshazzar, I'll go ahead and start reading it. Belshazzar the king invited 1,000 of his officers to the great feast where wine flowed freely. While Belshazzar was drinking, he was reminded of the gold and silver cups that had been taken long before from the temple in Jerusalem during Nebuchadnezzar's reign and brought to Babylon. Belshazzar ordered that these sacred cups be brought to the feast, and they arrived here, and his princes, wives, and concubines drank toast from their he drank toast from them to their idols made of gold and silver, brass, iron, and wood and stone. So what he did is he went when Jerusalem was fell, they went in and they took all of those things out of the temple that we talked about, all of the cups, all of the sacred things that they would do their different things with in the temple. And so Belshazzar goes, we have them. We have those cups. Let's get them out. Let's toast to our own gods about it. So he's going to find out what he did wasn't a very smart thing to do. Suddenly, as they were drinking from the cups, they saw the fingers of a man's handwriting on the plaster of the wall opposite of the lampstand. The king himself saw the fingers as they wrote. His face was blanched with fear. What would you do if you saw that? What would you do if you were sitting there and you're drinking from these cups that you know where they came from and you know that it was not a good idea, or at least they knew then. What would you do if you started seeing writing appear on a wall from a finger? Let's see what they did. His face was blanched with fear, and such terror gripped him that his knees knocked together and his legs gave way beneath him. So he was pretty scared. He didn't know what he was saying, but he knew it was something. He knew that he had probably messed up by asking them to do what they were doing. It says, "Bring the magicians and the astrologers," he screamed. "Bring whoever reads that writing on the wall and tells me what it means will be dressed in purple and robes of royal honor with the gold chain around his neck and become the 3rd ruler in the kingdom." The king grew more and more hysterical. His face reflected the terror that he felt, and his officers were shaken too. He knew he was in trouble. He knew something was up. He knew it was very supernatural. But when the queen mother heard that what was happening, she rushed to the banquet hall and said to Belshazzar, "Calm yourself, your majesty. Don't be so pale and frightened over this. For there is a man in your kingdom who has within him the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, this man was found to be full of wisdom and understanding, as though he were himself a god. And in the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, he was made chief of all magicians, astrologers, and the soothsayers of Babylon. Call for this man Daniel." Or Belshazzar, as the king called him. That was Belshazzar was the name that Daniel was given by the King Nebuchadnezzar, which is kind of confusing sometimes, but anyway. "For his mind is filled with divine knowledge and understanding. He can interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve knotty problems. He will tell you what the writing means. So the Queen Mother says, go get this guy that we know can help, because he did in the time of your father. He was there. He was a high-ranking man. So they sent for Daniel. So Daniel was rushed in to see the king. The king asked him, are you the Daniel that King Nebuchadnezzar brought from Israel as a Jewish captive? I have heard that you have the spirit of the gods within you, and that you are filled with enlightenment and wisdom. My wise men and astrologers, remember I said about astrologers and the soothsayers and all that? Well, that's where he was kind of going for anything at that moment, probably before Daniel. That's where any of his, because that's what he, I guess, believed. It says, my wise man, the astrologers, have tried to help with the writing on the wall and tell me what it means, but they can't. I am told that you can solve all kinds of mysteries. If you can tell me the meaning of those words, I will clothe you in the purple robes with the golden chain around your neck and make you the third ruler in the kingdom. So here he is again. I'll make you a ruler if you can help me out. Daniel answered, keep your gifts, or give them to someone else, but I will tell you what they mean. Your Majesty, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar, who long ago preceded you, a king and a majesty and a glory and honor. He gave him such majesty that all the nations of the world trembled before him in fear. He killed any who offended him and spared any he liked. At his whim, they rose and fell, but when his heart and mind were hardened in pride, God removed him from his royal throne and took away his glory, and he was chased out of his palace into the fields. His thoughts and feelings became those of an animal, and he lived among the wild donkeys and ate grass like the crows, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven. He's talking about when Nebuchadnezzar completely and totally thought everything that he had was because of what he did. And then God put him out into the field, and he grazed with the animals, and he did all those things until he realized who God really was, and then God restored his kingdom. And that's what Daniel's talking about right there. And his successor, O Belshazzar, you knew all of this, yet you have not been humble. You have defied the Lord of heaven and brought here the cups from this temple. And you and your officers and wives and concubines have been drinking wine from them while praising gods of silver, gold, brass, iron, and wood and stone, gods that neither see nor hear nor know anything at all, but you have not praised the God who gives you the breath of life and controls your destiny. And so God sent those fingers to write this message. This is what it means. Mean, M-E-N-E, means numbered. God has numbered the days of your reign, and they are ended. Oops. Tekel, which is the second word that was written, means weighed. You have been weighed in God's balances and have failed the test. Parsin means divided. Your kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then, at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was robed in purple, and a golden chain was hung around his neck, and he was proclaimed third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede entered the city and began reigning at the age of 62. So, Daniel was once again called upon because of his relationship with God, because of what he had with God. His prayer life was unbelievable, and so God communicated with Daniel in every way. So when Daniel came to him with different things that he needed, God was right there because he had a relationship with God that was unbelievable. When you read Daniel and you read about the things that he did and the dreams and being in the lion's den and all of those things, I want you to remember you need to think about yourself and where you are with God. I encourage you to go and spend some time alone with him. because that's where it is. That's where you find out who God really is in that time that you spend, that you go off by yourself and you spend time with God and you talk to him and you pray. You ask for forgiveness, anything that you've done that you know wasn't right. Don't let that follow you. Don't let sin weigh you down. Don't let sin separate you from God, because it can if you let it. Make sure that you, instead of worrying, you pray. And know that your prayer is heard. Because your faith is what gets you through these things. Faith is what got Daniel through the things that he had to go through. He went through being completely yanked out of his home, his country, his comfort zone, everything that he had. The only thing that he had left was his faith. And he leaned upon that. And his faith saved him from death. And it will you too. So I encourage you to get into the Word. I encourage you to read Daniel. Sorry, I have hiccups. I encourage you to read Daniel. Because there are dreams, there's prophecies that he dreamed about the future. And I think it's important that anybody as a Christian knows or has read that. Because it's, we don't know what we're going through now, or we don't know what's going to happen except through prophecy. So I encourage you to go and you build on your relationship with God. And the way that you build on your relationship with God is spending time with him. Not just in prayer right before you go to sleep. I'm talking about remove yourself, go to a room where it's quiet, and wait on God. I miss y'all. And I'll pick back up in Daniel on the next one. I want you to know I'm thinking about y'all all the time. And I really am enjoying my time gardening, playing with ducks, different things like that. Okay, love you. See you next time.